Okay, sports fans, welcome tonight. We're going to do a deep dive on a couple of our favorite tanks tonight. And I know we always say favorite tanks, but all our tanks are favorite tanks. So notice we're still in the German mode, but today we're coming up with the King Tiger. What this is as you can see, it's a large tank. It's the largest tank I think it was produced for World War II. It was 67 tons, 67 and a half tons, 28 feet long and 14 feet wide with a height of almost 14 feet. Had the largest, second to the largest cannon mounted into it. It was a how big a cannon? It was an 88 millimeter.
Yep.
So it put a lot of punch. Now we want to talk about it the first of the war. As all the German tanks were when they first came out, it was plagued with reliability issues. Towards the end of the war, these guys had their stuff together as far as keeping these tanks together after they got all the initial production tweaks fixed. Is that correct?
Yeah, you know what that reminds me of?
What?
In recent video game development history, video games have been pushed out really quick. They're trying to get them to production immediately.
Yeah.
And they're plagued with glitches and glitches and glitches. And it's not until like a year or two after the fact that those video games are even playable. And the Germans were under the same problem. They were pushing and pushing, and I understand why they were pushing. You know, they were losing the war, but they pushed these things to design so quickly that, of course, they were plagued with failures.
Yeah. They did up the horsepower to this thing to 690 horsepower and 700 pounds of foot torque, something like this, and it was a Maybach V12 engine with 700 horsepower, and so it had a lot more power than some of the other ones that they had, that's for sure. But, you know, reading some of the observations, they said that this tank was more nimble than their other tanks. They said watching it, it was as fast, could negotiate around soft ground and down a road more nimbly than the other tanks because of the wider tracks. It had huge 29-inch wide, nearly 30-inch wide tracks on it, and all these road wheels, torsion bar suspension in it, kept the thing flat on the ground, and the weight was very evenly distributed. Plus, it was almost a balanced 50-50 weight ratio from the front to the center to the back of the tank. So it was balanced, it was wide, and it was stable, and it was very nimble, and it could outperform some of the smaller tanks, especially the Panzers, the Panthers, and the Tiger IIs. It was a very nimble tank. It also cruised at 24. It would do sustainable cruise on roads at 24 miles an hour. They only built 492 of the Tiger IIs, and you want to tell us why they only built 492?
So between the months of September and October of 1944,
whatever year it was,
the Allied bombed the Henschel plant, and they destroyed up to 92% of the floor space of that plant. So they were able to cut down the production. Originally what was ordered was 1,500 King Tigers, or Tiger IIs.
Yeah.
What they were able to produce, less than 500.
That 492 made it out to the field.
So 2/3 weren't produced because of a key bombing of a plant.
I think I read somewhere there was nearly 675 tanks in production when they started bombing the plant.
Yeah, like over 671, I think.
It was at 671, yeah. 671 tanks were in production when they started bombing that plant. Reading through the history, they were used in all the fronts. You know, even though they had 400 and only about 500 of them, they were used on the Russian front. They were used in Hungary. Over 150 tanks of these Tiger IIs was present at the Battle of the Bulge. We got a brand new camera tonight.
Yeah, so in the comments, if you like this video quality better, you can blame it on our new camera.
Yep. Okay. So anyway, so they had 150 approximately 150 Tiger IIs present at the Battle of the Bulge. Now, this is the scariest spec that I read, Adam.
What's that?
At 1,000 yards, this tank was 100% reliability to hit first shot.
100%.
That's what it said.
At 1,000 yards.
At 1,000 yards,
Wow.
2/3 of a mile almost, it was 100% accurate at 1,000 yards with its advanced optics sighting system in it. The cannon was calibrated well enough on these that it was 100% accurate at 1,000 yards, 97% accurate at a mile.
Wow.
That was far more accurate than any other tank, including the Tiger 1s or the Panzers or anything. This thing was, it was a scary, good tank once they got it running right. 59% of these were running at the end of the war, and they were all over. And, you know, they we hear about them just because they're big and ugly. But the fact is, these things were badass tanks.
Yeah.
They were fast, they were powerful, they end up being more reliable than the other tanks.
I'm just grateful that the Germans didn't produce it earlier in the war.
Yes, we also found out that they were really, that several of the Allied generals and commanders thought that if the King Tiger would have been introduced a year and a half earlier in the numbers that Hitler ordered, it could have had a significant impact on the war. One of the other problems they had with the King Tiger, we talked about how nice and maneuverable it was and how it was agile on those things. The thing was so damn heavy, it wouldn't cross most of the bridges of the rivers that they built, like in Normandy. They couldn't get towards the Norman front during the Allied invasion of D-Day because there wasn't any bridges strong enough to hold the King Tigers. When they tried to cross a bridge, King Tiger fell into a river and it was unrecoverable. It was still there after the war. One of the first ones made. They had to transport them. I don't know how they transport them.
They did put them on trains, but they had to change the tracks.
They put skinny tracks on them.
Yeah, they had to put skinny tracks on to put them on trains, and then immediately they had to switch them out when they finally made it to their location.
I bet that was a pain in the butt to change those.
Wouldn't want to be that guy.
I saw them put tracks on it at the American Tank Institute, one of the big tank museums. They had an elephant there, and they had to change the tracks out on that because they were welded shut, so they had to take them off and redo them. And they had to take it like a Cat D9 to pull the elephant while they got the tracks off of it. It was pretty interesting.
They were able to have such fine motor movements with that turret. They could move as slow as 1.1 degree with a light touch on the controls. And so they could get so fine detail, and that's part of their accuracy at distance.
So that'd be like 360 seconds. So if 360 degrees is 360 minutes, it would have 360 seconds on the compass degrees.
Right.
So hell, that's
real fine.
Yeah. Didn't they say wasn't the rotating speed on that turret when they gunned it up? It
was fast.
It was faster than any of the other tanks too.
I think they were able to go up all the way to 36 degrees a second.
Wow. So they could rotate 360 degrees in 10 seconds.
Right, or take an hour to spin it.
Or take an hour to spin it if they did it at 0.1 degrees. So it was accurate within 0.1 degree calibration.
Yeah.
And it was as fast as doing 36 degrees per second. I didn't know that till tonight, by the way. I always thought they were pretty good, but I didn't know they were that good.
I didn't either.
And 97%.
Yeah, at a mile.
At a mile. So that would just... That's farther than the range of any of the Allied tanks. There wasn't a Sherman was only good about 1,200 yards, and Okay, let's talk about this King Tiger thing. We're not done with talking about King Tiger yet.
Nope.
Say bye-bye to the Yellow Tiger for a minute. These things could take so many hits.
Yeah.
But okay, you read this. You told me this.
Yeah, so there was a commander. He was a tank ace, actually. Otto. I can't remember his last name right now.
Brother Otto.
Yeah. He was a tank commander, a heavy tank commander, and he commanded a battalion with these tanks. And he said it was not uncommon for one of these tanks to leave a battlefield having been hit over 20 times, but not being disabled.
With main rounds.
Yeah, with main rounds by another tank.
Yeah. Allied tank could hit these things 20 rounds.
And it not be disabled.
Yeah. Very tough tanks. Up to 7 3/8 inches of armor on the front mantlet here, and on the front glacis here, it was 6 inches thick and 7 3/8 inches piece of metal here. So they could take a shot right here. There's pictures of these things with fist-size dents in them where rounds had hit them.
By this time, the Russians had a 12.6?
122.
120. It's 12.2 centimeter rounds.
Which were the biggest ones of the war.
Of the war. There wasn't a bigger gun fielded in the war.
On any side.
On any side,
yeah.
Right. That would match what was the Yog Tiger gun.
Yeah.
But so the Russians had a gun similar to the Yog Tiger gun. And it would still take, if they aimed it just right, hit the welds just right, it would take 4 to 5 shots.
5 to 6.
5 to 6 shots of a 122 millimeter round.
At 500 to 600 yards.
Right, at 500 to 600 yards, which means it's been within range for 500 yards.
Yeah. So this sucker would have been taking it out 1,000 yards out from that. It's 1,500 yards at a mile.
Right.
A mile's 1,700, 1,720 yards or something like that.
Yeah.
So
1760.
Yeah, 1,760 yards. So this thing at a mile would be taking out that hunter destroyer that I can't remember. It was the L-2200 or something.
IS-122.
IS-122 is what they called it. It was a tank destroyer that the Russians did. If the damn thing could get within the 500 yards on it and shoot it 6 times on the same weld bead, they could get it to crack the hull.
Yeah, that's so ridiculous.
Why they sat there and didn't move? This agile big tank wouldn't move long enough for this guy to get within 500 yards and shoot it 6 times right in the same spot.
Right.
Yeah. They're wildest dreams.
Yeah, exactly.
Before we move off of the King Tiger, I know we keep going back to that. Let's talk about the other King Tiger that they made. They actually had 2 King Tigers that they did. This one here was the one with the Porsche turret. And they actually only made half a dozen of these or so. And this was made by our buddy Ferdinand Porsche. And his turret, the reason it wasn't successful is that this was a very difficult mantlet to make. It was a curved mantlet. Try bending 6-inch steel at this angle here. It was difficult to make. And plus what they found out in field testing, I think they found out the hard way, that this would become a shell trap. Where's a pointer? We need a pointer. That's not much of a pointer. But this would be a shell trap in here. So a shell came in here and popped the turret right off. And so this hole underneath here was just nothing but a round magnet. And the shell would come in and get stuck there, and it would cause, like I said, they only made a half dozen of them, and they found that out in testing. But I think the second tank they tested, that happened to them. They went, oops.
Yeah.
And by that time, the Herschel turret was well underway, and obviously it didn't have that same problem.
Right.
It was a lot less that's just a big flat piece of steel they could cut out there, and these were all rounded, and they just welded that up. So it was a. So this was an idea, but not a good one. So strike one against Ferdinand Porsche on that one. Here's our two King Tiger tanks. This one here, not so good. This one here, towards the end of the war.
Excellent.
Really awesome. 59% reliability compared to even the Tiger tanks. The only thing that exceeded the reliability was probably the Stugs and the Panzer IIIs and Panzer IVs.
Right. Doug, who are we sponsored by tonight?
I think we're sponsored by Diet Mountain Dew, our unofficial official sponsor of Tank Talks. This was a Tank Talk tonight. Did we introduce this as a Tank Talk? Maybe we ought to do Tank Talks.
Yeah.
The other night we did Tank Talks too. So, all right. I love King Tigers. They were, as I'm going to say my statement here, these were killing machines. They killed people. Their whole purpose was just to cause death and destruction. But as a mechanical engineer, knowing the design processes, what they had to do, the manufacturing processes and things like that, they're just fascinating. And yes, their cause is a horrible, despicable reason for being in, designed in the first place. But you look at strictly as a mechanical engineering feat, time to production, how to make them, knowing what their role was in their successes and failures in World War II. It's very humbling to know that a lot of people lost their lives at the hands of these King Tigers, but they're still cool. Strictly as a mechanical.
Strictly
as a mechanical. There's only one King Tiger left in the whole world that runs. It's in the Bovington Tank Museum in France somewhere, and they get it out and they have it run one day on Tank Day out there. And so I have some videos of that if you want to look them up. So
maybe one day we'll go.
Maybe we'll go. I'd love to go to the Bovington Tank Museum, especially after finding out about all these tanks. I guarantee we're going to be talking about American tanks one of these days, but if the damn Germans didn't make so many damn tanks, we could start talking about American tanks. So, damn it. All right. Subscribe, damn it. Bye. And here's some of the reliability issues. Right here, while we're taking a film, one of the exhaust stacks broke off while we're trying to film this thing. So, guess what? We're going to have to get that, pull out the welder and get that welded right back on there so we don't lose that. So we'll put it right there for good storage for now. So that's some of the reliability issues that we had.